Hello, my brothers and sisters. This is Sean, and today we will be talking again on vaccines, the moral dilemma of vaccines in a culture of confusion. So, last time we talked specifically about the vaccines, and today we're talking about the culture of confusion and how to just get a sense of the basic information that is out there or that is not out there. Just to give a quick summary from last time, it is the reality that in some degree there is a connection with vaccines and the and abortion, unfortunately, to the great sadness of all of us. It is acceptable to get the Pfizer and Moderna vaccine because of some different qualities, and I'm just going to run through those real quick. Because it is very far distantly removed from the evil action of abortion, because we are not willingly cooperating with that abortion, because we have voiced our concerns, assuming that you have voiced your concerns, and because there is a sufficiently grave and proportionate reason to attain it. That is to say, for a person's health as well as for the health of the common good, the health of society, of people in society. So you may get it. That is the answer. It's a free option. You don't have to get it, but you may get it, and I recommend that you get it. I will get it as well. Today we're going to talk about the cultural confusion that we have going on, because it's just hard to get a sense of like, well, maybe these vaccines maybe they're permissible, okay, fine, but maybe they're not healthy, maybe they won't help, maybe what's going on, we just don't know. And I'm going to talk about this in a very broad way that is very helpful for us to engage with other dimensions of our responsibility to live well in the society, because we got to be informed to different degrees. Let us begin with a quick little prayer. Come, Holy Spirit, be with us. Send us your wisdom and guidance so that we may know what is good, true, and beautiful, and that it may lift us up to you, and we may communicate your goodness to the rest of the world. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen. Very good. I have a kind of a unique background here. When I was in college, I got a bachelor's in natural science with a concentration in math. It was something like that. Essentially, I studied math in college. And then I particularly think I did good with statistics. And then in seminary, we had to study philosophy. And part of philosophy is the philosophy of knowing, of learning. Epistemology is the technical fancy word. And I'm also going to be drawing on a class that I took, which was morality in the mass media, which is super fascinating, super interesting, and super helpful for this conversation today. So I'm just kind of putting it all together, synthesizing what I think is important so that we can move forward with confidence in following God's path for us. Firstly, I want to address what our goal is. My goal is to be a participant, a good participant in society. This is the Christian call, to go to heaven obviously one day, but to be not ignorant of our duties and responsibilities here, to those who God has given to us, as well as to the broad whole. This is called the common good. We have an obligation to the common good. This is very key for Catholic social teaching, for Christian understanding of moral participation with the rest of the world, to pursue the common good. That is to say, the sum total of social conditions which allow people, either as groups or as individuals, to reach their fulfillment more fully and more easily. That's according to the Catechism of the Catholic Church. You can put it a little bit more simply and say, a good society makes it easy to be good, and we're pursuing a good society so that other people are going to be good. This is an idea that comes from Peter Maurin, who with Dorothy Day started the Catholic worker movement. It seems obvious for us to say that good people make a good society, and a good society makes good people, and a good people makes a good society. Kind of a little rotation like that. Kind of a little bit circular, but this is kind of what we got. I think we can't escape the reality of the obviousness of that. Despite it being obvious, I will say that there is a train of thought that would propose that it is to be preferred that we look for a system in order to pursue what is their interpretation of the common good, to look for what is truly good and what their aim is, and to understand that a bureaucratic system is going to be the one factor, the key factor to pursue this. That was a big theme in the line of thinking of Marxism, and it continues to be today with kind of the advocates for a welfare state program. This is why the church does not support a welfare state idea. So this is the common good. But also the common good is pursued for a higher good, because we're not called merely to participate here and to dwell here and to create an earthly paradise. We are called to ascend to a deeper paradise. One day we hope to go to heaven, and we hope that the common good is a good platform for us to pursue that. But also, here and now, we are called to live friendship with God. So, that is the purpose of the common good. And that is the purpose of the media, the news, the entertainment industry, all this kind of stuff. And so we're going to first off look at the difficulties here, then we'll look at the responsibilities, and then we're going to look for a path forward. So first off, let's address what are today's problems. Y'all get it already, but I'm just trying to put a little bit of framework on what you all understand. There's false information, or what is better known as fake news, which is real. There is news that is wrong. There is news that is slanted, and there is news that does not have nuance. We can consider all these to be fake news. There are also questionable sources of information. That's a problem for us. Just who the heck do I trust? We don't always know. And sometimes we might get information that is not fake news, but it might be hyper emotionalized, or it might be hyper moralized. Just as an example, vaccine is safe, therefore I should get a vaccine. Well, maybe adultery is safe, but you shouldn't do adultery. Like that just doesn't make sense. So we got to be watchful of moralized information. Just because there is a fact doesn't mean that there is a moral conclusion. Not at all. So this is the problems or the challenges of receiving good, true, and accurate information and relevant information. There's also the challenge of providing that with other people. Because on one hand, there's just so dang many voices. There's so many voices out there, and you just get lost. I don't know how many people are going to listen to this at all. Probably not many. That's the truth. But I'll put it out there for those who are interested in hearing a little bit more of the nuances. We who are proposing information, proposing content, as the big word is these days, on Facebook, on Instagram, on TikTok, on podcasts, wherever it might be, there is challenges out there. There's a lack of preparation to investigate and to trust what is appropriate. There's a poverty of responsibility among those who are proposing this information. Let's address now the responsibilities there. It's kind of a nice little pathway forward. One of the problems is a lack of responsibility, so let's address the solution. Where is the responsibility? First, let's look at the responsibility for those who are receiving the content, because we're not supposed to be clueless people. That's not good. Don't be dumb. Just to kind of put it as rule number one. This is nothing new. This is a theme that has begun to be, it was talked about, years and years ago. So Pope Pius XII talked about responsibilities regarding our engagement with movies and radio and television back in 1957. It was a document called Mirandu Florsus, I think. I don't know what it means, but it was addressing the new role of movies, radio, and television. So very relevant still today. Very, very relevant. Though highly forgotten. He writes, "It is essential that the minds and inclination of spectators," or we could put audience, probably a little bit more common these days, "be rightly trained and educated, so that they may not only understand the form proper to each of the arts, but also be guided by a right conscience. Thus they will be able to practice mature consideration and judgment, and not be lured and arbitrarily swept away by their attraction." So here he's hitting on the need for the education of our mind, so that we can truly engage with some of these things in the mass media, and we don't get blown away by them, that our minds be firmly set on the truth. We have to have this preparation. And the documents that come from the church have continued to reiterate that. In schools, it's got to be there. Parents got to be educating their children. They got to be saying, hey, look, this movie's not helpful for you. Let me tell you why. Let's watch it together and say, like, look, 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 look. Like, if parents aren't doing that, they're doing it wrong. Hate to be blunt. That's how it is. Also, that means with this preparation, our mind's preparation or education, we now have the responsibility to be selective in what we watch. Just because we can discern what is good and what is evil doesn't mean we should just watch what is evil. No, we have to be prudent and wise and pursue what is good. Secondly, the next part that comes from our education is voicing concerns. When we see something that is not helpful, be like, hey, look, this is problematic here. Y'all got to fix this. Y'all got to do something about it. The third thing, responsibility that comes from this general responsibility of educating ourselves and our minds and our children and other people, is to voice our hopes. We want people in the media who are producing good movies, who are producing putting together packages of news that is good and helpful and fruitful and accurate and relevant and truthful, all these kind of things. We want good moral and spiritual formation integrated into those systems of education that prepare people to engage with the media. We need that. They need that. The world needs that. The common good needs that. This is all a common good oriented discussion. Now let's look at some responsibilities for those who are producing quote unquote content. Again, I'm talking about us here. If you have ever liked anything, there's an algorithm that knows that you like that has made it more likely that someone else sees what you have liked. This is how that works. It's just, we have to know this stuff. We have to know this. Anything on Instagram, anything on TikTok, again, podcasts, whatever you're thinking, whatever you're doing, if you have done any kind of thing online, well, be aware. Do not be ignorant. First, there's 4 things here. First, it must be decent, to be not offensive, to not be provocative of any unhelpful emotions, and that are provocative of any unhelpful actions either. It has to be decent. I was driving here today and I saw a truck that had Trump with a curse word on it. Well, the children at my parish will see that. I'm not a fan of that. Secondly, it must be honest and not aim at other purposes than the purpose that is oriented towards the common good. It cannot be duplicitous. It cannot be aiming at getting money. No, this is if you push something out for a larger audience than the local audience, this is something that hinges on the common good. And if you're not aiming at the common good, you're doing it wrong. Truthful. You know, if someone's intentionally proposing fake news, well, they're responsible for that. If somebody is accidentally proposing fake news, well, they're responsible for that as well. Yep. If you are a person who's shared something and you didn't fact check everything, yeah, you're responsible. Absolutely. Go to confession. Get your sins forgiven, because that's a sin. We also, this is the 4th point here, we have to understand the medium that we are engaging with, and we have to understand the cultural context. We have to realize that there are these algorithms that push things or pull things or that promote things one way or the other or demote things. And we also have to be aware that there's circumstances and other people's hearts that we're not aware of. Someone might be super angry out there that we should be clueless. We should have a clue about. There are people who are biased. We should be aware of. There are people who will comment on things. Well, we need to be responsible regarding the forum for those comments. Let there be no doubt about that. So, let us now get into the education side. This is the responsibility side. Yes, I said there is a responsibility to educate oneself. And now let's kind of walk through what it means to educate ourselves into the wisdom of the engagement with media. First off, I want to just comment that there are degrees of certitude. I think this is important. When we're trying to figure out what is helpful for vaccines, like what is the scientific information out there. Well, we need to realize that there are some people who are gurus about this stuff and they know what's going on. And they're able to see what is truly right and good and what is true. What is true? I guess I want to speak about what is true specifically. And then there are some people who they don't know as much, but yet they are still very loud advocates of this, that, and the other. There are degrees of certitude. There are degrees of having confidence in the material that we are holding. And this is obvious. If you are a person who likes to gamble when you go play poker, you'll know this really quick. If you have your hand will wins or will not. Perhaps the other person's hand will. But the reality is already set. You will win or you will not win. But it's up here. This is why gambling is unique, because it depends upon our confidence. If you are totally and absolute confident that your hand will win, you're going to go all in. If you are totally if there's no confidence at all, you're going to just fold. You're like, I'm done. I can't do anything here. I'm out. Or if there's something in the middle, you're somewhat confident. Well, you're place your bets. You're gonna try to feel it out a little bit more. Blah blah blah. Obviously, it's much more nuanced because there's strategy to play poker, because you're betting against another person to win maximum money or maximum chips. But just in general, you're gonna bet according to your confidence. Well, using that analogy, let's look at how we hold information here today. Like, I'm looking at a camera. I'm 100% confident of that right now. I'm looking at my cell phone and I'm talking with you. But I don't have the same confidence to say where you will be. I bet you will be at your home listening to this. But I don't bet much money on that at all. I put very little bit of money on it. I have a low degree of confidence for that proposition that I have. There's maximum confidence of just full-on belief, or there's very little confidence where it's just kind of like an opinion. And then there's somewhat confidence. And even that somewhat confidence has a variety. You can have some certitude, you can have some vague certitude, or you can have just whatever kind of certitude. You're not even thinking about it. We have to be thinking about these things. We have to know to what degree we have to receive this information and hold it to. And we have to recognize that what helps increase or decrease our confidence regarding the information that we're holding is different forms of justification. If I have received a lot of justification for a proposition, well, I'm going to have a higher degree of certitude. I'm going to have a lot of confidence in that. But if someone told me something with no justification and I'm not really trusting that person, well, I'm going to have a low degree of certitude, a low degree of confidence in that. This is very important. So some examples of this would be, do I have a trusted news source? Do I have a credible witness? I'm going to listen to them more. And whatever they tell me, I'm going to hold that with a greater confidence than with someone who's like, you're a person I don't trust. Like, maybe you're right, maybe you're wrong. I don't really know. I'm not going to write you off just because you're crazy. But I'm going to just hold it at arm's length a little bit, as opposed to coming in, bringing it in and giving it a big old hug and holding it close to my whole life. Also, there's just kind of the concrete reality of being close or far from something. So, for example, if you hold a milk jug in your hand, you want to know if it's spoiled or not. Well, if you take off the cap and smell it, if it smells spoiled, you're going to know with great high absolute confidence that it's spoiled. But if you just look at it and say, oh, the expiration date was yesterday, you're going to have a lower degree of confidence that the milk is spoiled. Just kind of how it goes. Now, we have to recognize again, there are degrees of confidence in the different propositions out there. Both different degrees in the people who are communicating to us, and then also different degrees of confidence in our reception of that information. And the great enemy of this, well, first off, we should say, the goal is to maintain an appropriate confidence regarding this based on the justifications that we have. We have to hold whatever piece of news as true or not true, and then we also have to hold its interpretation of it, its moral interpretation, its historical interpretation, and its relevancy. And there might be other different ways of interpreting it. I'm not trying to be exhaustive there. But we have to hold it in its appropriate importance. The enemy of this is very frequently our emotions, because emotions can be blinding. If I am suffering greatly, well, I'm going to not be thinking about what I'm going to do tomorrow. I'm not going to be thinking about who I'm going to vote for, because I'm just thinking pain. It's overwhelming me right now. Or sadness, perhaps. Maybe someone had died in your family and you've experienced this before, and the only thing you can think of is just that sadness for their loss. It's blinding in that way. Sexual desire is very famous historically for being incredibly blinding. And no longer are people thinking of responsibilities. Instead, people are like leaving their families in order to pursue X, Y, and Z. I don't even want to go down that rabbit hole and think what they're pursuing. The two things that I want to mention particularly as relevant for us engaging with different messages in the media are the emotions of anger and the emotions of hope. Anger is very blinding. When someone goes on a rampage, we say that they come back to their senses afterwards. Because they left it, they were gone, they were blinded, they no longer had use of their reason. With hope, we can see something as good. We can see something as attainable. There it is, like, I can go for it. And then there's the inclination to be daring, to be a little bit more too daring than they should, to lean on themselves and this opportunity more than prudence would dictate. This is essentially what leads down the path to pride. Now, as these emotions jump up and we risk being blinded by them, there is a virtue that is very important to help us moderate this. It's called temperance. Temperance is the virtue that moderates or regulates or controls the excesses of our passions or emotions or desires. So regarding anger, we need to develop a sub-virtue of temperance that is specifically oriented towards anger called meekness. Meekness. And regarding this hope that escalates into daring, which that escalates into pride, we need to use the sub-virtue of temperance of humility. This is how it goes. We need temperance. We need to be able to control ourselves. If you are realizing that that's kind of you, that you need some help to control your emotions, well, there's a great book I recommend you. It's great because it's a bunch of just like one-page chapters, and the chapters are tips. Sometimes there's 2 pages or 3 pages, but it's just long enough to be able to kind of, eat in a little bite there. It's very helpful. It's called the Emotional Intelligence 2.0. I recommend it very much. It's been helpful for me. We need to be able to see a claim. We need to be able to see the justifications for that claim. And we need to be able to hold that claim with the confidence that those justifications merit. Meanwhile, we need to be holding at bay any unhelpful emotions that are trying to interrupt that process. Now let's talk about trustworthy sources. News agencies, podcasts, friends. These are what I'm talking about. And there's principal criteria in looking for good sources. It's very important. We have to have our good go-to sources. They can't be fused with pride or anger. As soon as I read that, or as soon as I hear the anger in a source, I'm just like, you know what, you're done. I can't follow you anymore, because I know the risks of being blinded by that. You can absolutely be blinded by that. And so I'm not going to listen. Somebody handed me a paper, I'm like, Father, you gotta look at this. And it's about something regarding with coronavirus. And I picked it up, and it was angry. And I was like, I'm done. I'm not going to read it. No offense. I'm not going to read it. He has no credibility with me. The second principal criteria is that they offer legitimate and sufficient justification to the degree that they are able to do so. Yeah, I want my news sources to be able to back up what they're saying, not just assert. The third principal criteria that I propose, there could be others, is that they have sincerity. Actually, I'm going to have a fourth there. That they have sincerity, that they're not, biased, that that they're pursuing the common good, I guess is what I'm going to say, that they're honest, that they're truthful, that they're responsible. The fourth is that they are professional in what they do. My professionalism is to give you well-prepared theological, spiritual, reasonable support for you to interpret vaccination stuff and media stuff. My professional stuff is not with the tools. I'm using my cell phone here. I don't have a studio, and I'm sorry for that. So I lack the credibility there, and that's a lot. That's why a lot of people are probably not going to look at this. It will affect that, and that's okay. So find some good sources for you. For me, I listen to a couple of podcasts. One is the Breakpoint podcast, which I respect very, very much. I think they do an excellent job of giving basic information. They're not a news agency, but they do give interpretation of it, which I find to be very helpful and very balanced and very well interpreted in the Christian worldview. There's also another source podcast. It's called Doctor, which is the official podcast of the Catholic Medical Association. And I find those doctors to be wonderfully spiritual people, as well as the people that they interview. And they're interviewing professionals in the top of the field regarding the health stuff. And it's very helpful because they've been very, very focused on coronavirus stuff. And so that has been my key source of news and regarding coronavirus stuff, because I just trust them a lot. I just trust them totally, almost. Maybe not totally, but I trust them in a very significant way with great confidence. In the Catholic world, I use Catholic News Agency. Maybe I'm a little biased. I think I know one of the people, maybe two people who are actually there. I don't know them very well, but I trust what they've been able to publish, and they're very clear about, like, this is an opinion thing here. This is what's going on here. This is the church's teaching on this. And it's just nice and clear. So find some friends even who, if you're not able to, find a news source, we'll find some friends who are able to be good points of contact for you. I remember in seminary, I had like two guys who I'd be like, hey, look, what's going on in the political world here? Like, I'm lost. I don't get it. I need some help to interpret it all. And it was great because they'd just be like, and as Christians, we need to interpret it as, which was like, yes, why can't I just have you around all the time? And if you can't have a news source that you give a lot of trust to, if you don't have friends that are able to do that for you, because I recognize that as a difficulty, then look at multiple ones. I will do this. I will look at Fox News and CNN, and then Google News, just to kind of get some see the different headlines and kind of read through what I need to read through, and then compare. That way I can eliminate whatever biases are there, and that way I can see more explicitly what biases are present. I don't ever use one of the major news agencies in that way. In fact, I don't ever watch the news because I think it's not trustworthy. I go to the doctor's office or dentist's office, or maybe I'm waiting to get my car worked on, and there's the news on right there. And it's always opinion. Oh my gosh, you gotta be kidding me. Even when they're giving the news, it's so much opinion. Like this, that. I don't watch it. I do not watch the news. And I think people who watch a lot of the news, they're responsible for any errors that they are falling into and any false opinions. And they should probably check themselves before they wreck themselves. Sorry for being a little cheesy there. And when I read also, I read very minimally. I don't read much of the articles because I don't want to receive their worldliness and their emotionalized garbage. So anyways, that's one thing. This is going to be a little bit longer here. I got one more part on bad arguments, then I'll lead to the conclusion here. So bear with me. Be aware of bad arguments. Arguments are attempts at persuasion. Be aware of bad ones. There are good ones out there, but be aware of the bad ones. These are also called fallacies. I'm going to run through some of the more common ones and maybe give you a few examples. So the first one is arguments against a person. They're just shouting at him. Ad hominem, I think, is the technical word for this. And they're just against a person. The one article that I read that I was telling you about that was very angry, well, it said Fauci is our #1 enemy. I was like, whoa, like where'd this come from? Like, yeah, maybe he is. I really don't know. But like, back it up. No justification here. It's just against the person, which is very similar to the arguments simply by assertion. It's true because I said so. Which, you know what, these days is pretty dang persuasive for a lot of people out there. We have to be highly aware where there's a legitimate justification, a good argument, or whether it's just an assertion. Fauci said masks weren't effective, and then he changed his mind and said it's effective now. Therefore, he's a bad man. You just asserted that. There's nothing going on there. Maybe he found new evidence, or maybe there was a new review of old evidence, or maybe there's a new understanding of public health out there. Like, those are legitimate reasons for him to change his mind. Like, that's okay. You're allowed to change your mind without being a bad man. Also, there's the moral assertions. It's just right. You wear your masks. Just wear your mask, people. Just wear your mask. I knew someone who had COVID, and I think you felt like he had more moral authority. And so as he was kind of describing his COVID life, he would have a sentence, then wear your mask. A sentence, then wear your mask. A sentence, and wear your mask. It's just like my gosh, man, like, where's your evidence that helps? I think masks do help, for sure. I've done my research, and that's kind of where my investigation has led me. I think they are effective, but you got to find the justification for it. It's very similar to bandwagonism. Having just jump on the bandwagon. Who wants to join me in this? I want to be a good citizen, so I'm going to wear my mask and I'm going to get my vaccine. I think it's very helpful. We should be obedient to our government leaders at all. There's no question about that. Anyone who says, well, I have a right to be disobedient, well, it's like, if it's reasonable, you don't. You don't. No, that's just crazy. It's anti-biblical. I mean, St. Paul says, give them respect, give them honor, follow their guidance there. They're not our absolute leaders. God is. We're going to follow him first. As St. Peter reminded us when he was brought before the leaders of the synagogue, or leaders in Jerusalem, we follow God first. But in the sense that, we have something that is directing us to the common good, let's not think that we're more important than obedience. Anyways, that's kind of a side note. Please excuse me. Side note, as a priest there. But we have to just not just merely be willing to jump on the bandwagon just because. I was talking with the bishop about this, and he noted that some good Catholics do this. He's like, some good Catholics see some other good Catholics out there who don't approve of vaccines for whatever reason, and therefore they don't. Now, in some sense, they are credible witnesses, but in some sense, it's just like, hey, these are a group of my friends, and they can't quite back it up, but that's just kind of what they're doing, and that's not helpful. It's just not helpful. I mean, they have the right to say, no, I'm not going to get a vaccine, but they need to be influenced by reasonable justifications and not just because other people are doing it. The next fallacy that I will talk about is hasty generalization. I'm going to use the example of the vaccines cause infertility. By the way, here, I'm not making a statement on the scientific elements of this at all. I'm just using how sometimes people can use these ideas that are out there. And the generalization is based on that there is a certain pregnancy protein that is very similar to the protein that is targeted by the vaccine. A reasonable response to this observation and to this claim would be to investigate it, which can be hard for people. Like, where the heck am I going to find some good research? I'm not a doctor. I can't read through statistics. That's hard. And also just having some good hesitation, just waiting to make a claim. Like, well, I don't know. Maybe this is relevant for me as someone who's hoping to be pregnant, so a woman might say, or someone who is pregnant. Well, you can be hesitant until there is enough justification for a more sincere claim and a higher confidence of generalization and claim on truth. It would be unreasonable to say that vaccines are bad for mothers. They just haven't done the testing on it out there. I mean, there's some observations with pregnant women who have gotten COVID, but you need to look that up. It would also be unreasonable to make a blanket statement that says pregnant women should not be vaccinated. You may make the decision to not get a vaccination if you are a pregnant woman or hoping to be pregnant, but I mean, there's a lot of factors here. It ain't so simple. And so you can't make a blanket statement and say you can't. The next fallacy is anecdotal evidence. These are stories, There's a story about a priest at St. Pius, and oh, he's so skinny, he doesn't eat food, bring him food because otherwise he will shrivel up and he will die, and you will have no longer a priest at St. Pius, and it'll be so sad, and then people will cry and they will leave the church and they will no longer follow God, and they're going to bring people with them, and the whole civilization is going to fall apart because of this. I brought that a little bit over the top there, but one example does not give evidence for the whole. That's just crazy. Stories can be very helpful, very effective. They're definitely very effective. But at the same hand, the people who are using stories need to be using them for the common good, to orient people to the truth, not to their opinions, not to their anger, not to their personal preference, not to their proud goals in life, their own personal forms of excellence or their personal projects. That is not allowed at all. And that is what is done a lot of times. I find strange when you watch the news and at the end of the news program, they're like, oh, by the way, let us take a sneak peek at a little story here. It's just like, this ain't the news. You gotta be kidding me. This is not relevant. This is one story. Like, sometimes it might be helpful to hear the inside situation from someone who's been there so that I can sympathize with the situation. But we have to be very careful. The news people got to be very careful about that. Because just because there's a story out there that has a nice ending doesn't mean that the moral of the story is human morality, true human morality. Be aware of bad arguments. Be aware of good arguments. Good arguments we call justification for confidence in holding something to be true. Bad arguments are just wrong. And you're welcome to call them out on that. And probably you should. In conclusion, I want to talk about, again, what it means to be informed as Christians. People will tell me as a priest, you need to be informed. And they'll usually say this after I'm like, I don't watch the news much. Like, it's just hard. I don't like it. And I say there's more than not liking it. I feel like I should not engage with it, actually. What they tell me is true. I do need to be reasonably up to date and informed of the news. But there's another factor that is true that we all need to be aware of. It is more true. We need to protect the seed of faith that we have. In our baptism, we have been given life that is beyond earthly human life. We have received divine life, and that divine life can die. We need to be aware of this, and we need to be responsible for this. We have the risks of falling into error, of falling into emotionalization, of falling into worldliness. We need to be responsible for the seed of faith that has been given to us so that it can grow and not die. Because it can die. It really can. There's a higher responsibility than just being informed, but it's to maintain the truth of the faith, the goodness of the faith, the beauty of the life of Christ within me. It doesn't eliminate my duty to be informed, reasonably so. It shapes my duty to be informed. We must be informed Christians, but we must be informed in a way that is in accordance with our dignity as Christians, in accordance with the beauty of our baptismal gowns and our life of faith, hope, and love. We must be responsible dispensers of content as well. Again, we forget that we are members of the mass media. We're the ones who are pushing out content these days. If you've ever shared anything or liked anything on whatever, and they've gone beyond an audience that you are aware of, you are responsible. You are very responsible. The audience is bigger. And we have to ask ourselves, is this for the glory of God and His righteousness? Or am I just being compelled to click? Is there that little itch inside of me that will go away as long as I click share or click like or write whatever I want here. We have to be people of temperance, be able to control ourselves. Because if we can't control ourselves, we will no longer be pursuing the common good. And if we're no longer pursuing the common good, not only are we denying our falling back or falling from our Christian responsibilities to be good citizens, but we're also contributing to something that is a fallen state of the common good that does not lead people to be good, ultimately to be friends with God. In a little way, you can be an advocate of other people being friends with Jesus Christ by being responsible online, being responsible with how you and I participate in the different forms of communication that are out there. So, in a nutshell, don't be dumb, be wise, be a good Christian, be responsible, continue to love God, and love your neighbor in God's love. God bless you. Thanks for tuning in. Bye.